In this video we'll show you how we can use the typed input commands to create some geometry. So I've started the CAD system, and the first thing we'll do is, suppose we want to draw a box. So we go to box. This is a rectangular box. So we use the typed input window at the bottom here. So for a box we need the X and Y coordinates of one corner and then the X and Y coordinates of the opposing corner. When you're entering values within the command window down here, they can be in absolute or in incremental mode. The default is to be in incremental mode. So if I put in the bottom left hand corner of the box, I simply type in x0, y0. I don't need any spaces between the different parts of the expression, and I don't need a decimal point if I'm dealing in whole numbers. And to accept that, I press the enter key. So that's set the bottom left hand corner, and now I'll put in the top right, which is x50, y50, and press enter again. So the way that the CAD system works is that we stay in one particular mode until we change from one operation to another. So supposing I wanted to now put in a circle, and I go back to the command window here and I type in the coordinates of the circle. So if I say x20, y20, okay, so that's taken the commands from the datum point. But because I'm in incremental mode, if I now type in, say, x25, I'll leave out the y, but the command now is taken from the dot on the screen that you see here, the red dot. That is the current cursor position, and that's where the incremental figure will be taken from. So if I type in x25, then the circle is placed at 25 millimeters relative to the last input. And again, if I do x20, y20, you can see how that's working. So that's working in incremental mode. What I can do is, at any stage, I can use this button here, which is datum the origin. And what that does is it returns the datum points to the origin, which is 0, 0. So now if I type in x minus 20, y minus 20, those dimensions are now taken relative to the datum position, which I returned to its original point. So, but I'm still working in incremental coordinates. So supposing I wanted to return the datum to the original position and set that all my dimensions will be absolute, I click that button there and I get the red and white propeller, which shows me I'm now working in absolute mode. So if I now type in the coordinates of the center of a circle, x50, y50, then the commands now and the dimensions are all taken relative to the datum point. So if I simply type in x50 and leave the y without an entry, then the circle is placed at x minus 50, y0, relative to the absolute position of the datum. So we can continue now, and we might want to put in a line. What I'll do is I'll just get rid of these circles just so that we get a clear page. If you get any ghost images down the bottom here of little circles, just do a quick redraw and they just disappear. So if I want to draw a line, a normal line needs firstly the start point and then subsequent points. So if I type in x0, y0, that's the start point of a line, which we can't see anything because I need to give it an endpoint. So if I just type in y50, and now because I'm working in absolute, if I'm drawing a box, I want the top right hand corner, which is x50, y50, and the bottom right hand corner is x50, y0, and back to the beginning would be x0, y0. So that's a simple way of drawing a box using individual lines. If I'm drawing a line, then I can also put in the instead of Cartesian coordinates, I can use polar coordinates. So for instance, the end point of the line, I could have angle 45, length 40, angle 0, length 50, and so on, because those are absolute coordinates. If I switch that off and go back into incremental mode, angle 45, length 50 takes it from where I am. Another method of drawing a line, I'll just quickly redraw the screen, is to draw an angled line. So now an angled line is drawn at a position on the screen, wherever the cursor happens to be. But if I wanted to put in the coordinates, I could return my origin to the datum point and continue working in absolute. And now I simply, because the line angle is 0 degrees, I can type in just the y value. So I can say y20, y minus 75, and so on. To change the angle of the line, I go to the line properties, change the angle to 90. Now if I wanted a line going through the 0 point, I would just type in x0, x minus 50, x 45, and so on. If I want to type in an angled line at any time, I can change the angle to the angle I want, and again this will be a point that is passing through that line. So I could say y50. So it takes the y value from the datum position here, y50, and draws the line at an angle going right the way through that point, going right the way to the edges of the drawing. So the way that you could start off doing some drawing is to use the command window, but then subsequently start to use the fillet and chamfer commands. So if I draw some lines at 0 degrees and start off at y50, y25, y minus 50, now I change my angle to 90 degrees, and now because I'm working vertically, I'm using the x dimension, so I'm using x minus 50, x 20, x 50. So now I've got some basic lines, and I could simply add some fillets using the clip items, auto, and set the radius. So in this case it wouldn't be advisable to use the typed input command to create the fillets, because it would mean doing a lot of calculation about where the start and end points are. So it's best to use the command window to put in the basic geometry, and then use the other commands for modifying the geometry or for creating intersection points or chamfers. Okay, so let's just recap. I'll just get rid of those things. So the thing to bear in mind about the command window down here is that it can either be used in absolute mode or incremental. If you're working in incremental, then the current position is shown by the red dot, and that follows you around to whatever the new item is you've just created. If you're working in absolute mode, then you see the red propeller, so all the dimensions that you type in are absolute coordinates from that. So that's a switch which is either on or off. If you're working in absolute coordinates or incremental, and the cursor or the red dot moves to a position, you can always return the datum to the origin point using this button here, and that moves the datum back to 0, so that that's where the new commands will be taken from. If you're working on a lathe and you want to put in the coordinates in Z and X, you simply click that, and then the coordinates that you type in here will be the Z and X rather than the X and Y. but if you draw in X and Y, it makes no difference to turning, because it's the turning module that automatically converts things for you. Okay, so that just gives you a brief overview of how the command window works. Don't forget that when you've typed in something at the in this window here, to action the command, you press the Enter key. Okay.